So then when we finally got that diagnosis, and the geneticist said, we have a diagnosis. And I was like, oh, great. What is it? She's like, it's rare. There's nothing we can do. And I just broke. I'm like, well, now what am I supposed to do? Right. I just had this realization. I was like, I am so sick of watching families get walked on. And I almost promise you that not everybody's like me and they don't have the oomph to fight anymore because they're tired. So, how do I become an advocate? And then Rising Star Advocacy was born, and I became a special education advocate, and I have helped over 300 families in the state of Wyoming.
Welcome back again to another episode of the Confident Mompreneur podcast, where we talk to real women from around the globe about real life difficulties and triumphs in momhood, business, relationships, health, and more. I'm your host, Kyrie, ready to give you real actionable advice to help you become the best, most confident version of you in all areas of your life. Let's get into it. Welcome on today, Elle. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
We were just together, it was probably like, a month ago now for International Women's Day. We went to a brunch.
Almost 2 months, I think.
It's crazy. It doesn't seem like but we were together for International Women's Day, and she was on a panel, and the whole panel just did a great job, and it was so much fun. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for being here today.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
So for those who don't know you, do you want to start out by just introducing yourself, a little bit about who you are, what you do, your family, all of those things?
Yeah. So my name's Elle Sanderson. I am a special education advocate and a holistic coach. So I've been in the fitness industry for over 13 years now. And I kind of switched that to that holistic mindset. And you have to have all the things working together. And fitness isn't just about looking fit. So I do holistic coaching, but my main job, I am a special education advocate. I help families advocate for kiddos who have disabilities, either on IEPs or they're not on IEPs. And IEP is a individualized education program. And so I help kiddos who are struggling in school. And I do most of it here in Wyoming, but I am national because it's a federal law. So it goes everywhere. I do have 4 kiddos, and one of them has a rare genetic mutation called SYNGAP1, and he is my 3rd child. So I have 2 before him and 1 right after him. I'm married to a guy in the military, and we've been married for about 15 years now, ups and downs throughout the whole thing, and we kind of grew up together. So in a nutshell, that's who I am. I like clothes, all things clothes, and I don't have one style. I love pink, and I love riding bikes. I also like hiking, but I'm pretty well-rounded, I guess is the best way to put it. I can be in my business suit, or I can wear a backwards hat and go for a bike ride. It doesn't matter.
Yes, I love it. There were so many things that like you and I have in common that I'm like, oh my gosh, I just love her so much. Like when we showed up at that lunch and you were wearing that bright pink, like ruffly top, I was like, okay, yep, I like her. But so we actually met through a mutual friend, Rebecca, who is hosting the Hike Like a Woman retreat, and we've had her on, and we've talked, or not retreat, but summit, and we've had her on, and we've talked about the summit, and this will come out afterwards, but you guys can still access it at this point if you guys want to go and listen. But we were both speakers for it, and so Rebecca interviewed both of us for the podcast, and I heard Elle's story, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's so cool. So I like friended you on Instagram, I think, and then we just got chatting and had so many things in common. So it
Yeah.
it's so fun, and like both being Wyoming women in business who love the outdoors, who love working out. Like, it's so much fun. And you've had like so many ups and downs and just like trials and things throughout your life that you have just like taken as they come and like overcome them in so many different ways. So, do you want to share a little bit of your story and kind of how you've gotten to where you are now?
Yeah. So my story started a long, long time ago when I was just born, 35 years ago. So, um, I was born and raised in Southern Illinois, and I grew up in I want to say in poverty. I don't, there's no other way to say it. My dad was or is a Pentecostal pastor, and we grew up in church. I had five siblings. There was five of us in the home, but there was nine of us all together. So nine kiddos, and six sisters, or six girls, three boys. And so life was busy. I don't think I've ever had like not a busy life. And people are like, you can just scrape some stuff off your plate. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, I don't know what that is. So, growing up, I walked the soles out of my shoes, and I had hand-me-down clothes. When I was 14, we were on our way home from church, and I was hit by a drunk driver in my mom's car. So it was me, my two sisters, and my mom, and she totaled my mom's Cadillac. So I had a brain injury, and I had to relearn how to talk, and I had to relearn how to walk. And I was pretty athletic. I've always been an athletic person. I wanted to be in the NBA growing up. Uh, so when that happened, and I had to relearn how to walk, and I had to relearn how to talk. And uh, I can remember this one time when I woke up from a coma, the nurse came in because I needed to go to the bathroom. And I was like, I don't need your help. Like, leave me alone. I'm pretty sure that I told her, I'm 14 years old. I can go pee by myself. Like, so I went to get out of the bed, and when I did, it was like I just slow motion started falling because I literally did not know how to walk. And that was the first time like I realized like this is going to be a long road. Um so I didn't know how to walk until I tried to get up out of bed. Like, I was in a coma, and a coma stands for like 2 weeks. And that was just when I came to, and I was like, I'm just gonna go pee. Like, I didn't realize why I was there. I didn't realize why I was hurt. I didn't realize why the nurse wanted to help me. And she just caught me. And I'll never forget the look on her face. She was just like, it's all right. Like, so I had a long road, and then struggled in school a lot, and ended up dropping out when I was 16 because I was so far behind. I missed my entire 8th grade year. Got to ninth grade, was so far behind. Got to 10th grade, even further behind. So the day I turned 16, I said, Mom, just take me to school and sign the papers. I'm done. Like, I cannot do this anymore. People are thinking I'm choosing to be lazy, and I can't. Like, my brain hurts. So I dropped out. Um, dropped out, got pregnant at 17, and had my first kiddo when I was 18, and made some decisions to be a good mom and work full time. Then I got my GED when I was 18 and got married when I was 19. And long story short, got married when I was 19. Now I've been married since I was 19 and we have 4 beautiful kids together. And fast forward to 2017, my son was diagnosed with a rare genetic mutation. And it was like falling out of that bed all over again. We were searching for a diagnosis for years. He was 3 at the time, and I kept telling everybody there's something going on, there's something going on. And my husband thought I was crazy. Like it was really going to cause us to get a divorce if we didn't find some answers and if I didn't prove that I wasn't crazy. So it put a lot of strain on our family and our kids. So then when we finally got that diagnosis, and then the doctor, the geneticist said, we have a diagnosis. And I was like, oh, great. What is it? She's like, it's rare. There's nothing we can do. And I just broke. I'm like, well, now what am I supposed to do? Right. So when I got that, I cried about it. And then there's one thing that I learned. It's okay to cry about things. I learned this when I was really young. It's okay to cry about things and it's okay to release those emotions. It's what you do next that matters. I'm not going to stay in bed. I'm not going to, my kid needs me. This is rare. We don't know what his future looks like. So I'm going to pull up my big girl pants and do what I need to do in order for him to have what he needs.
Mm-hmm.
So just fast forward a couple more years and he's using a voice output communication device, which is an iPad that he uses to communicate. And the school says he can't have it over the summer. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know the law, but I'm pretty sure that sounds illegal. So I knew enough to get me in trouble. And I knew enough how to professionally put somebody on the spot because I knew that my kids would not ever experience what I experienced in school. Mm-hmm. So I called district admin. Well, at first I called his team, I called his district admin, and then I called the superintendent. I was like, he will have a voice output communication device today. And I didn't even know the law to back that up. I just knew that it sounded so horrifying that it had to be illegal. And it is. So it's only illegal if you get caught though, right? So I fought for that and then I just had this realization. I was like, I am so sick of watching families get walked on. And I almost promise you that not everybody's like me and they don't have the oomph to fight anymore because they're tired. So how do I become an advocate? And then Rising Star Advocacy was born and I became a special education advocate and I have helped over 300 families in the state of Wyoming.
That is so amazing.
Since 2022.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's so many in such a short period of time, but that just tells like the need that there is for what you do like in our communities. And I mean, obviously there's so much to your story and so much to unpack there, but like it's so interesting, I'm sure, for you looking back at the things that you went through, as a young teenager. And I'm sure it was so, so hard and you didn't think that you were going to make it through back then. But now you can look back on that time period of your life and you get to now use it as like that oomph to like help you as a parent that's struggling through those same things to, like you said, make sure that your kid never has to go through the things that you went through. And for now, other families too. But I'm sure at that time, it just felt like hell that you were going through.
So, I mean, it was hard. And there's a piece of me that didn't really talk about things until I started writing my book in 2020, and I started unpacking some things, and I didn't even put this in my book, but it will be in my next book. So when I was 16, I was in a really scary place, and it just like got chills because I don't really talk about this very often. Um, when I was 16, I was in a scary place, and I got involved with an older guy. I think he was 21. I don't even remember. Um, because that's not the important part of the story. So I got involved with this older guy, and he used me, he manipulated me because I was so young. I had just turned 16, and I dropped out of school, so I wasn't, I was running the streets um in Southern Illinois, outside of St. Louis area, and just in with some not good people.
Mhm.
And at the time I was hurting so much, I didn't care if they paid attention to me. I didn't care. Um so he ended up really hurting me, broke my heart. And I remember I was on a antidepressant at the time, and I was like, it hurts so bad. I I just want it to stop. And I hadn't taken my medicine in a couple of days. I took the entire bottle of my depression medication. And looking back, um, my cousin, well, she's my cousin, but she's not my cousin. She's like married to my cousin. So she's like, I was around her, and she ended up running me back to my house in my mom's car. It was my sister's birthday, my sister's 17th birthday, 18th birthday. And she took me to my mom's house, and they stopped and got some Epicac syrup, and they home pumped my stomach. It's basic. They gave me Epicac and made me throw up all those pills. And if she was not there, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know if I'd be here today, but I don't think it was because I wanted to kill myself. I think it was because I just wanted the pain to stop. And I thought that if I took all of those pills, it would help. And I mean, it was pretty much a full bottle. And I don't think I've shared that story a lot. I don't talk to my kids about it, because it is a pretty dark place for me. I've only shared it with my husband maybe once or twice. But it was a part of me that I kept pushing down for years. And all of that resurfaced when my son started going through his stuff. And I don't know why it resurfaced. I think it had something to do with the fact that I was hurting so bad and I wanted it to stop. Um, so I think it brought it back up because I wanted the pain to stop, but I knew I couldn't do it the same way that I had the pain stop before. So I started putting my focus other places. And there's so much from my childhood that I don't necessarily talk about, but I have a great amount of lived experience. And that's why I'm able to help the families that I help. Because sometimes, yeah, they have rare genetic mutations, and that relates to my life right now, right? Um, and then sometimes they're kids that are 16 who have a ton of trauma, and they just want to stop hurting. So my job as an advocate is I'm going to be that outside person that I don't care what you did in your past. I'm going to believe in you and think that you have the potential to be great. And I tell all my kids that. So when I work with families, I'm not just working with the parents. I connect them with wraparound providers and, community resources. But as a special education advocate, I'm going to go in and I'm going to advocate tooth and nail for whatever that student needs to be successful. And I think that comes from my lived experience, not only with my kid, but with my past as well. So,
Mhm.
it's tough. It's I couldn't imagine leaving some of these kids to do this stuff by themselves or these parents,
Yeah.
in all honesty.
Yeah. Well, there's so much that you said there that like I relate to, I've talked about it a lot on here about, after going through my divorce and then sexual assault and a whole bunch of other crap, when you just want that like pain to go away, it's like you said, not necessarily that you want to kill yourself, but just be rid of that pain. You get to that like it feels like you've just been thrown in this deep dark hole and there's no possible way out, and that seems like a reasonable way out. And it's such a hard place to be in, but I think, like you did, there's especially with like trauma and other things that we go through, we tend to put it in nice little boxes away in the back of our minds until something forces us to deal with it. And when we're forced to deal with it, it's like, well, I have two choices here. I either like figure out a way out of this pain that ends up in things like suicide or drug abuse or alcoholism, or we take the other side where it's like, okay, how can I use my pain to support others that are going through the same thing that I am? And I think that's where a lot of true healing comes from, is when we can take our pain and put it into purpose of some sort.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, and I've seen this a lot online, is your purpose is in your pain. It really is. And it doesn't matter if you have a great deal of pain, just a little bit of pain, your purpose is in your pain. And you can either use that to grow or you can use that to die. So, and if we're not growing, we're dying. So I think, and I really do believe that. I think that I've had a lot of opportunity to just die. And my, um, the whole process of just living, and there's a reason I'm here. There's a reason somebody's trying to take me out.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason somebody's trying to take me out, because we didn't just try to take me out once. We have tried to take me out at least like once in every part of my life, from my childhood to my teen years to my adulthood to now. And there's a reason. And I really do believe that's because I'm here to help other people so they don't get taken out. So
Yeah.
I
The
don't have,
devil works hard.
he does. He really does. And I have zero patience for any of that.
Mhm.
So
You're slapping that shit away every time it comes up.
yeah, I have zero patience for um negligence. I have zero patience for just pure don't be an idiot.
Mhm.
I will call somebody out really fast. I have said in meetings before where they're like, well, if he just really applied it himself. And I'm like, well, don't you think he'd apply himself if he didn't have a disability? Jaws drop. They hit the floor. And I'm just like seriously, kiddos with ADHD don't just decide to be turds. They don't. I mean, kiddos with cognitive disabilities, they want to be able to read, they want to be able to write, and that impacts their mental health. I have zero patience for grown adults to sit across from the table from me and tell me that children are choosing their disability. I'm like, well, you're just choosing to be an asshole. Simple as that.
Yeah. I think it's so funny. Your job to me is like professional Karen, just saying the things that other people are thinking but refuse to say, and like making people follow through with the things that they like say that they're gonna do. And I had to laugh when we were sitting there chatting about them trying to take away your son's device, and you're like, you cannot take away my kid's voice. That is literally my kid's voice. You will not take that away. And just like you stepping up and like uncomfortable situations and saying the things that people don't want to hear. And I love that.
Yeah. And I had this conversation with my daughter the other day because my daughter is she's such a sweet person and she's so compassionate and she does get that from me. The only difference between me and her is and I do believe that this is kind of what molded me and shaped me is her childhood has been like roses compared to what I grew up in. And I knew that no matter what anybody did or said to me at school, it could be no worse than what I was going home to. Not that my parents were fantastic people. They did the best that they could. But growing up in poverty is there were pieces of that nothing that anybody said or did to me at school would matter. That could be worse than what I was going home to. And the the difference between me and my daughter is she doesn't have that experience. She doesn't um she doesn't know what it's like to go to bed and your stomach is in so much pain because you're hungry. And I thank God for that every day that she doesn't. But that being said, um she doesn't have this I don't care what you think of me attitude. And I think that some of my I don't care what you think because I know what I came from. I
Mhm.
do. I know the things that I grew up without and the things I came above and out of. So I don't care what your credentials say. I came from the school of hard knocks, and trust me, your adult feelings, they don't affect me
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, that's a kid. And that kid's going to grow up to be amazing adults if we just put the right support in place. So I had the conversation with my daughter the other day. I'm like, because she's like in this space where she's 13, so or she's 14, so she like wants to fit in with everybody, but then she also wants to wear what she wants to wear. So she's like, I really want to wear, she wants to do like the whole prairie, little house on the prairie, homestead type style. Like she is all about it. She loves the prairie dresses, she loves all of those things, but then she has this conflict of I wanna I wanna wear Jordans, I wanna wear, like, my black pants, my flat-billed hats, and I tell her every day, I said, "You could see me on a different day of the week, and I have a different style every day. I have no one style that I stick to ever." Most people know me because I do wear pink a lot. Like, there's usually not a day that I don't have something that's pink on. Pink or orange, they're both my favorite colors. So um, that's kind of like that's how people know me is I wear color. I am a colorful person. I do love color. But that color could be in a blazer, it could be in a workout outfit, it could be um, a flat billed hat and Jordans. Like I just love clothes and I don't care that you think I have to pick a style. So I'm really working hard and helping her build that confidence. Like, doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It doesn't. At the end of the day, if it makes you happy, you do whatever you want. You seriously just do whatever you want within reason. Don't do anything illegal.
Right. No,
Yeah.
I absolutely love that about you. You're like so confident and you just show up as yourself in like every area of your life. And like you talked about it a little bit at the beginning, like that holistic attitude towards life, like how you show up in one place is how you show up in another place. And like
Mhm.
you can be yourself across all of them, and I very much, like, agree with that, and you'll see me out hiking in, my workout clothes one day, and then you'll see me at the gym lifting heavy weights the next day, and then you'll see me at a business function all dressed to the nines, like,
Yep.
it's lovely when you're confident enough in yourself to just show up authentically in every part and area of your life, and your
Mhm.
daughter, I got to meet her and be with her, and she is just so funny, and she's, like, definitely at that age where, like, you're
Mhm.
struggling a little bit with, like, getting to figure out who you are, but I
Mhm.
think, like, she was talking to me a little bit, and just, like, the way that you have taught her as a mother to show up as herself and, like, you exemplify that obviously in every area of your life, it rubs off on her. She sees it, she understands. And we all hit that hard part of life where we're kind of like figuring ourselves out, and middle school and high school was
Oh,
hard years. Oh my gosh. So, she'll figure it out, especially when she has a mom like you to kind of lead her and guide her. So,
thanks. I appreciate that because sometimes I'm like, man, I'm spinning my wheels because she does. It's like, and the thing about it is, when I was her age, I wasn't into boys. I was, like I said, I was super athletic, and like you could always find me on the basketball court, like you just could, or riding my bike or just outside. There was nothing else in the world really mattered. But now we have technology and all these things like just clouding our kids' heads. And it's so hard to say, nobody else matters, just you, because the internet tells them something different, right? The internet tells them all the things. And I grew up in that era where internet was just now starting. So I'm like, man, like, the selfies where you like had to turn your phone around, the flip phone. Um, and my kids just don't have that same experience. Like there's social media, which my kids are not on social media, but most of their friends are. So now we have like this peer stuff where we don't have social media and everybody else has it. And I'm like, I don't care what everybody else has. I'm I am the same in every single aspect of my life. And I think that that's so important because I think that's why it's easy for me to look at an adult and say, I don't like the way you just presented that, and I don't care. It's and it's not that I don't care about other people's feelings and I don't have empathy for them, but kids come first for me. They always have. And if you are an adult making negative comments about a kid's disability in front of somebody who parents, that child is somebody's baby. And you are telling the parents everything that's wrong with their kiddo and that their kiddo's choosing to be that way. Like, you're not going to treat parents like that in front of me. And I'm not saying everybody does that, but there's a lot of meetings that I go into and they're just like, no, they're choosing to be this way. And I'm like, are they? Don't you think that if they didn't have a disability, they wouldn't do that?
Mm-hmm.
That's part of their disability. That's how it presents. And so I'm not saying kids are all perfect and rosy, but you're an adult. You're an adult and you are in a space to serve kids.
Yeah.
And if you're not there to serve kids, I don't care about your adult feelings. And I am the same way at the gym. I'm at the same way at home with my kids. I'm the same everywhere. So even with personal training clients for years, I'm like, this is what you need to do. This is what will help you. You can choose to do it or choose not to. That's your option. I don't care what your excuses are. Excuses are, everybody has them. Everybody has them. You can either choose to use them or you can choose to let them get in your way. And I've always been a pretty blunt person. So it's both a gift and a curse at the same time. I get myself in trouble sometimes.
No, I think that's so good. Well, and you and I have had that discussion. My son is on an IEP at school,
Mhm.
and he went to a daycare in town that is like our developmental daycare.
Mhm.
And I was running into so many issues. It was like almost every single day that I would get a report about some sort of behavioral issue with him. And as a parent, like when you get that every single day, like
Mhm.
that is so crappy. And your kid comes home feeling crappy and because they're being told, how bad they are, how naughty they are, like all day long. And so we went through the process and got him on his IEP when he was in preschool. And they still like there was no communication. Like we transferred when he was about to go into kindergarten, the summer before he went into kindergarten, they transfer them into like their
Their homes.
elementary school program. And when they transferred him over, they didn't transfer his paperwork, even though they're within the same system, like owned by the same person, everything.
Mm.
They didn't transfer the paperwork. And I got so mad. I was like, how do you guys not have this? Because they started, bringing up issues to me almost every single day about things that we had discussed and like had things for in his paperwork. And I was like, why do you guys not have this? You are under the same system. They're like, well, he doesn't get any of the stuff during the off season, during the summer. Like he doesn't receive any of those things. And I was like, that doesn't really matter. I don't care if he's meeting with his therapist or whatever, but you as teachers that are with him all day long should know what's going on and should know how they were dealing with it so that you guys have better tools in the
Yep.
classroom. I was like, this is so ridiculous. Why do I have
Yeah.
to go through this again with the same people? And then we got him into a more hands-on kind of learning style lab school here, and his team that has been with him has been
Mm.
so good, so amazing. His teacher is very hands-on, like lets him, he's got ADHD and some other like social behavioral things
Mhm.
going on. And so like she's like, I've recognized like he's always listening to what I say, even if he's not sitting down to listen to what I
Mhm.
say. So I let him walk around the classroom. I let him bounce on a yoga ball, all of those different things. And, I'm big on the gym. And so I take him to the gym with me every weekend. And like,
Mhm.
it's one of his favorite parts of the weekend. And I get so many compliments every single time I'm there about how well behaved he is, how respectful he is, how kind he is. And I'm like, yes. Would you believe that my kid is on an IEP for like behavioral issues? And they all look at me and say no. And I said, that's because he's in the right environment. He's got the right tools, like all of these
Mhm.
things
Mhm.
that provide him the things that he needs to be successful, to be that kind, respectful kid that I know he is.
Yeah. And the thing about it and oftentimes I actually was just in a meeting the other day and the IEP was written for 34 instructional weeks. And I just said, hey team, can I ask why this IEP goal says 34 instructional weeks? And they said to me, well, Elle, the first week we're just kind of getting our feet wet, and then the last week of school we just kind of hang out. And I said, mm-mm. I said an IEP starts day one, they walk into the door. That's what the federal law says. It has to be in place the day they walk in the door. And they didn't they didn't combat me. They didn't, okay, Elle, we'll fix that. I bet you will.
Sure will.
And I'm not trying to be rude, but like we don't write IEPs for 34 instructional weeks. The student is in school 36 instructional weeks. That is
Mhm.
what we write IEPs for. And then I was in a meeting the other day and they said, he moves around the class and he goes under the table and blah, blah. I said, I asked my son the other day if he was listening to me and I was like, no, you're not. No, you're not. And then I said, what did I say, Jaden? And he regurgitated everything I said. I said, if you did that to that student, is he going to regurgitate everything you said? He does sometimes. So guess what? Your inattentiveness and his paying attention, they're two totally different things.
Mhm.
And like, you have to realize that somebody else's paying attention looks very different than you're paying attention.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I think it's wildly inappropriate that you just told me that he could regurgitate everything you said and you still don't think he's paying attention. How in the world can somebody do that if they're not paying attention?
Mhm.
Well, he's not really paying attention. I'm like, can you judge that? Can you measure intent? No, you can't. So those are just kind of the things that I deal with in IEPs. And you have to have the ability to say, shut it kindly and professionally. and put somebody, and you also have to have the ability to check your ego at the door. Because if I'm wrong about something, I'm going to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, which doesn't happen very often. But if I am, I need to be able to check my ego at the door. Because I can't serve kids if I don't put kids first. That means checking my ego at the door. Or for anybody else, that means the same thing. So that's just, I don't know. You just have to be able to tell people nicely to shut
Yeah.
up.
Well, and like as parents, we're our kids' biggest advocates, especially when they're young and they don't really understand or have a voice yet. Like we have to be that voice for them. And you talked about this a little bit at the beginning, how like mother's intuition, like you knew that something was going on with your son. You didn't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like you guys fought to get a diagnosis for a really long time, but like if you hadn't put in that fight and that effort and like been that advocate for your kid, you may have never gotten a diagnosis for him. You may have.
He would have been diagnosed with autism, and that would have been it. And um, he has he has intractable epilepsy. He has so much going on. It's more than just autism. Does he have characteristics? Sure. He has sensory needs, things like that. But he doesn't quite meet the bill for everything. So you just have to be willing to, one, speak up for your kiddo, but it's hard when you're tired. That's
Mhm.
where I come in. It's hard when parents are tired and nobody's listening to them. I know what it's like to be in a room full of people and nobody's listening. So both doctors and schools. So my hope is when I go into a meeting, not only am I going to give the parents the skills, but if they don't want to say a word, they don't have to. I'm going to say everything they need me to say, probably more. And I'm going to take that burden from them because that's what I needed when my son needed help. And I didn't really have somebody like that.
Mhm.
So I've kind of just stepped up to the plate and said, hey guys, it's me. I'll help.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Which it's amazing that you do that, but I'm sure it's also very like taxing on you to always be in those spaces too.
I mean, sometimes if I see, sometimes I see teams grow, which is amazing. And I love that. And sometimes I see teams not grow and they're treating parents with just disgusting disrespect. And those times, those are the times where I'm like, I don't have patience for you today. I do not. And towards the end of the school year, my patience face is like, it's
Not
gone.
existent.
Sometimes I can't even look at if it's a principal. I've been in a lot of meetings for the same thing for different kids. I can't even look at them during the meeting anymore. I'm like, I'm done with you. I'm done with you. Say something stupid, please, so I can put in a state complaint.
Right.
Like, and
I
I'm not there trying to get people in trouble, but when you knowingly lie to parents,
mhm. You're
I'm
like,
gonna,
I have a major issue with that. Yeah.
I do. I do. And it's usually not teachers.
Yeah.
It's usually
Well,
not teachers, it's not service providers.
yeah, it's usually the principals or
Yeah, the big boss
supervisors or
man.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, if a parent is at a place with their kid where they're like, this might be something that we need to look into, like we're constantly having issues with teachers or other things, my kid is not learning at the level that I know they can. Where do they start and what should they know?
So they can always contact me through my website. It's risingstaradvocacy.com. I do online trainings for parents all the time about the law, and most of those are free unless I have to put a ton of effort into them. Um, then you can always look at, there's a website called Rights Law, and that's WRIGHTS law.com. And he is like the attorney that puts out all the special education law stuff. Then there's Special Education Academy. So that's something that is helpful. If they're here in the state of Wyoming or if they're here where I'm at, they're always welcome to come into my office and I can kind of help them with next steps. My job is to really help parents understand what their rights are. I want to work myself out of a job because there's so many kids to serve and not enough me's. So I want to give parents the tools that they need to be successful. And sometimes that takes a lot of time. Sometimes parents get it right away and they only call me when they need to. So you can find me on my website. You can find me on Facebook, Rising Star Advocacy on Facebook. And then I have my Instagram, Rising Star Advocacy, and TikTok is Advocates in Pink. So
Nice.
uh
Love it.
yeah. You can find me on any of those platforms and I can help you.
Yeah. And she's obviously been doing this for a while, so she's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this stuff. As a busy mom, business owner, like, especially a mom to special needs, you're trying to do all the things, you're working out, you're biking, you're literally doing everything. How do you take care of yourself and find time for that?
So a lot of times, and people tell me this all the time, you're like, take your stuff off your plate. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. Don't come at me like that. Because I've always had chaos in my life. And I tell people all the time, I tell my clients, I tell my coaching clients, my special needs clients, chaos is inevitable. And the moment that you decide, okay, chaos is inevitable, what can I offload for now? What can I, take it? In what order do I need to prioritize things?
Mhm.
So I have a lot of hobbies. I bike, I sew, I hike, I gym. I have a ton of hobbies. And if I'm in a creative space and I kind of feel like nothing else is really getting me past that burnout and I really need some time, I create. And I kind of I do have ADHD, so I'm all over the place, but I'm organized all over the place because I also have OCD. So they kind of work
Organized
together.
chaos.
Yeah. So you have to be willing to say, okay, chaos is inevitable. And once you realize that, it's like, what order of chaos do I need to put things? Because I know that I have this case next week, and these are the things that I need to put in place for that case. These are the things that my kids need this week. I am sometimes a procrastinator, so that is an issue. So I kind of combat that with I make a ton of lists all the time and I do brain dumps. I have two huge whiteboards in my office and sometimes I just brain dump and write everything on them and clear my head out because that's just how I organize things. And the other thing that I think is super, super important is being outside. So when you go outside and you just take a breath of fresh air, I don't even care if it's just a walk around the park. I take a few minutes outside every morning because I take an ice bath every morning. And even though the ice bath sucks, hearing the birds or just smelling the fresh air, that's enough for me to say, I'm ready for today. Nothing can suck as bad as this ice bath. Um, so let's do it. I don't know. I think the most important thing is realizing that chaos is inevitable and you have to be able to manage it. I hope that answers that question. That was like a long answer.
No, it was a great answer. I think that's truly the key to like being a mompreneur is just like figuring out how to manage the chaos and like prioritizing
Mhm.
everything that's going on. Cause like you said, everybody always tells me like that they're going to start working out when things slow down or
Never gonna happen.
yeah,
Never gonna
it
happen.
it literally never happens. There's always gonna be something more going on. You're gonna kids
Yep.
are gonna need something new from you. Like, there's so much that we have to deal with that it's just like, okay, well, you can't just sit around and wait for the chaos to like chill out. It's not gonna happen. So how can we
'Cause
deal with what we need today?
yeah, and I tell my kids this all the time. I'm like, look, there's four of you. There's one of me. Y'all need to like take a minute because I need to process some things. Y'all have just dumped everything that's going on at school. I still haven't come home from work. And you have to have those boundaries too. I think that that's really important. Like I'm a pretty strength-based parent, but I'm not saying I don't yell. Sometimes I get like super overstimulated and I'm like, all four of you need to shut up now.
Mhm.
Let me take a shower. Let me do something for a minute so I can come out of work mode and come into mom mode, because I think that having those boundaries with our kids is important. Like, don't just come into my bedroom. And I know what it's like to be sitting on the toilet and then your kids are like knocking on your door. So my older two, they don't do that as much anymore, but I've created some boundaries for my kids. And if they break those boundaries, I'm going to tell them about it. So just like they don't want their brothers in their room, I don't want them in my room if I'm just getting home from work. Just like they don't want somebody in their business, I don't want them in my business either. So I think that it's important to understand like it's okay to put boundaries for your kids. When we let our kids like just break those boundaries repeated, then they become adults who also don't know what boundaries are. And that's a problem. So creating boundaries, you gotta I think that's really important as a mom, is you have to know that you have to take care of yourself first, or I cannot take care of anybody else. So, um, I think that's important.
I think we've talked about this a lot on here that like we as parents are the examples for our kids. They see the way that we treat
Mhm.
ourselves, they see the things that we do for ourselves, and that shows them, like we were talking about with your daughter, how they can be for the future too. My son knows my gym time is my gym time. And
Mhm.
like we're there so that mom can lift. He can come talk to me, do all that stuff. But when I say it's my time, like he knows to skedaddle. My room is my room. And I tell him
Yep.
overstimulated. He's only 6 and he understands all of those concepts
Yeah,
because I've been telling them to him since he was 2. Like our kids are so smart and they pick up on all of those things
they
and
do.
they get to implement it into their lives too. And they see that we give ourselves that permission and they can do it too.
Yeah. I think that it's and I'm starting to see that with my daughter, because there's certain things that my daughter doesn't talk with her friends. And, I do monitor their phones, so I'll like go through their phones and they hate it. But
Mhm.
um, they'll say when they start texting somebody like a new friend on their phone, they'll say at the very beginning of their conversation, I don't want to see anything bad on my phone because you're going to get me in trouble if you do. Like, and that's me creating boundaries for them, but then them enforcing those boundaries. So my 16-year-old, he's like, hey, listen, we don't cuss on my phone, period. We don't call people names. We don't send me memes, don't do. And I think that me creating boundaries has then helped them enforce their own boundaries. And my daughter also has boundaries with like, she doesn't um like it when people talk to her about self-harm.
Mm,
And it's because she's had a friend that kind of used that in a manipulative way. And I think that we've all kind of run into those situations where somebody's like, well, if you don't do this, I'm gonna hurt myself or kill myself or something. And um being young, she has already created that boundary. Hey, if you're going to use me as like a fence post and you're going to use me and manipulate me and try to use self-harm to manipulate me, that is a no-go. As soon as you start talking about self-harm, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call the social worker at the school. I'm going to tell the social worker,
mm,
and then I'm going to exit, because I can't deal with your trauma and my trauma. And I think that I do have to remind her sometimes, but that is a hard boundary for her. And
mm,
I think that her seeing that I put my boundaries up and I don't budge, I do not move from that. It's super important for her as a girl in this day and age, because it's tough. Some of the stuff she deals with, I'm just like, man, sweet pea, I'm trying to wrap my head around some of the things that are said at your school.
mhm,
And I'm super proud of you for like creating that space where you're like, mm-mm, we don't talk that stuff. Like, and if you do, here's what I'm going to do. And
mhm,
her friends know that. So if they tell her that, it's probably because they know that she's going to tell an adult and they secretly want her to tell an adult, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't know how, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just think that boundaries are so important. And if you have boundaries as a parent, that's going to bleed into your kids, and then your kid's going to know how to enforce those boundaries.
Yep. Yep. Well, I have loved this conversation. Obviously, there's like so much more we could go into with you. Like, we barely touched the surface on things. So, if people want to know more about your story, tell them about your book. Um, and then just rehash all the places that we can find you and see all the things that you've got going on.
Okay. So I wrote a book. It's called Claiming Strength, Reflections, and Foundations. So it's just a little bit about mental toughness, and it is written at a 5th to 7th grade reading level. And the reason I did that is because 65% of adults, since we know 65% of adults can read at a 5th and 6th grade level, not above that. So I wanted to write a mental toughness book that could meet the needs of all people. And I wanted to share my story. So it's called Claiming Strength, Reflections, Foundations, and Reflections. So you have a journaling prompt at each chapter. And then you can find me on Facebook, Elle Sanderson on Facebook, or Rising Star Advocacy if you want to talk advocacy, Rising Star Advocacy on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, Rising Star Advocacy on Instagram, and then all things bikes and everything else is on Bikes and Blazers on Instagram. And you can find me on TikTok, Advocates in Pink. All the things kind of land on that page. I really didn't want to separate a TikTok. There's too much. So everything's on TikTok, Advocates in Pink. And you can always email me as well. And that's l@risingstaradvocacy.com.
Awesome. Thank you again so much, all. This has been so good.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey guys, thanks for coming to this week's episode of The Confident Mompreneur. If you loved today's episode, let us know, share to your stories and tag us, send to your friends, give us a rating, all of the things, and make sure to check out our guests and follow them on all of the links that we listed above. If you're looking for me, you can always find me at The Confident Mompreneur, and you can also check it out www.theconfidentpost.com for a blog relating to today's episode. I am so happy you're here, and I hope to see you again next week.